Welcome to another edition of the Gravestone Pros with North Country Memorials. I'm here with my wife, Delite. Today we're going to tell you the story of working on a monument for a dear friend and mentor, Gene Miller. Come along. All right. Working on a monument of somebody that you know personally, you know very deeply. It's a little bit of a different experience. Not complicated, just stirs a lot of memories as you're going through the process. Some of my first memories in this monument is, of course, of Gene Miller, who was a camp director where I went to camp as a kid. Ultimately became my mentor and pastored me probably more than anybody for the up close and personal stuff, for sure. First memories of Gene, and as they developed over the years, never really changed as far as who he was and what I always thought of him as. And he was a very kind, even though I know myself at times was probably very difficult as a kid to have around. But he was kind, he was gentle. Another thing about Gene is he was a very positive person. He would see the best in people, and that's what he would talk about. How about some of your thoughts?
He was always a very kind person. I was never much of a camper myself, and well, I married somebody that was into camping more, and so I ended up in the camping situation, and yeah, he was just always gracious and kind and very loving, and yeah, it didn't make me feel foolish because, oh, well, I'd never hiked 5 miles before and was scared, and yeah, he was just very nice.
Now, the camping situation that you're talking about is when you and I were first married. We spent a summer as counselors at Penyard Camp, where Gene was the director, and put us in interesting situations, being married, and me having a boys' cabin, her having a girls' cabin, and a lot of interesting things. I remember you wearing high heels around camp.
I was.
You were different.
Well, I never had been much of a camper, but they were gracious, and I also remember you had to get up early in the morning, and I was a nighthawk, and you had morning devotions or whatever, and I remember that so well, and it was 7 in the morning, and boy, that was way early in the morning for me. But again, I probably didn't always get there quite on time, and they were always just gracious. Yeah.
Some of my earliest memories as I got a little older in camp would be going on trail camps, a week of backpacking, and Gene just taking time to point out things in nature and kind of correlate them, with scripture. And we did hiking for a week, a couple different times in northern Pennsylvania, and then also went one time with Gene on the Bruce Trail up in Canada. And later on, and this was again a picture of Gene's gracious wisdom in handling people. I actually eventually led a group, and without going into the detail, we had a couple of near-death experiences that week. And when I came back as the leader of that week of backpacking, I had to go immediately and report to Gene and let him know we had a couple incidents along the way, and the gravity of the situation just hit me hard when I shared it with him. But he again just took it with grace, and we talked it through, and it was just again encountering somebody that was a very mature, kind person.
Yeah. 'Speaking of difficult situations, Jean and Sharon were both there during a really difficult time in our life, and I'll just be forever grateful for that. And yeah, I'm just thankful that they were there when we were having a rough time, and they gave us good advice, and they were just dear friends, but dear mentors in that way as well.
One of the things that makes somebody a good mentor, and I learned in how Jean dealt with me and handled me, was to be kind but firm, loving but very straightforward, and to not mince words, and not beat around the bush, but to say things direct. And he was very good at that. Another one of the things that was a highlight memory as I look back and I realize the wisdom and the graciousness. Like I said, we were camp counselors. I had a cabin full of boys. She had a cabin full of girls, and that meant spending the week apart from each other. And we had not been married a full year yet. And on the weekends, Jean and Sharon would insist that we were to leave the campgrounds and we were to go 20 minutes away, and we spent the weekend in their home. And rather than them going home and getting a rest and a break from camp that summer, they gave it to us to be in their home. And as I got older and looked back and realized the sacrifice that they made for us, and just really caring about our well-being, and that was very good. Anything else from you?
Well, I had thought about it, that it's sad really when you lose friends and you're making their monument. Obviously, I'm not the one that makes the monuments, but I thought about this whole situation, and I was thinking, it's really, I wrote the words down, I guess. I wrote down that it was a blessing and a privilege that we really received by having them choose us to do their memorial. Yeah, it's just really, it's sort of sobering and yet very touching, and we feel very honored. And I continue to keep in touch with Sharon. She's a dear friend, and I continue to pray and think of their family very often.
So setting this monument, we were 4 hours away, and it was the timing of all of it going down to near Wellsville is where they lived, and the timing of it, I knew that we were going to be cutting it close, knew what time it was going to get dark, and so we got down there, and I realized, okay, I've got just enough time to set this monument. And Sharon met us there at the cemetery, and a young man from their church actually showed up and was there, and it was nice. It was a good help, and it was Sharon's first visit back to the cemetery, and since Jean passed. And just a really neat happening. Like I said, it's getting dark. The sun started to set, and it was cloudy, as you can see from the video, but it wasn't raining anywhere that we could see. And at one point, and it'll be coming up, and you see the sun is starting to brighten in the western sky, and we looked out over top of the monument after we got it done, and there was a rainbow forming in the sky where there was no rain. And the rainbow is a promise of God that the earth will never flood again, and there it is. And
it's an amazing shot.
Yeah, it was absolutely amazing. We realized that we were in a very holy moment.
Yeah, it was definitely a God moment. Like that rainbow ministered to our friend Sharon a lot. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next time.